Have you ever played a Souls-like game and thought there weren't enough crabs? If so, look no further than Another Crab's Treasure, in which you fight multiple crabs and play as one too. There's already a vast and growing ocean of Souls-like games, but this one provides a unique take on the genre, with a more light-hearted presentation combined with some platforming and a dash of RPG elements. I played this game for 12 hours up to completion, and while some elements don't mesh quite as well as I want them to, it doesn't change the fact that Another Crab's Treasure is still a solid game that appeals more to new Souls-like fans than seasoned veterans, even though they still will find something to enjoy here. Players assume the role of a hermit crab named Krill, appropriately named since he's about to krill the people that took his shell, all in the name of taxes. Yep, this game is anti-capitalist and I couldn't be happier. Or at least it starts that way before diverging into some surreal places that I cannot spoil here. Just understand that if you think you know where the story's going, you really don't. Either way, I wouldn't say I was entirely captivated by the story, as it's just something that's there to keep the game moving forward, but it was never so overbearing that I felt it detracted from the overall gameplay. We even see Krill undergo some serious character growth, and it gets into some pretty dark places at times. Yeah, remember when I said the game was more lighthearted than other Souls-likes? Well, it is and it isn't, especially when characters are dangerously close to swearing.
Oh, shuck.
Although it's not that offensive, so I'd say someone around their preteen years could still play without being traumatized. But like, have you met preteens? They say some pretty messed up things. Now, as for the game itself, Another Crab's Treasure is built off the bones of a Souls-like. There's an emphasis on locking onto enemies, dodging their attacks, and if you're not careful, they can deal some serious damage. If you've played a Souls-like, you already know firsthand how they feel. Thankfully, the game does a lot to differentiate itself from the likes of Elden Ring and Sekiro, as it introduces some unique mechanics like the shells themselves. Strictly speaking, they're not shells exactly, as they are trash left behind in the ocean. We're talking soda cans, shot glasses, boxing gloves, you know, the typical stuff you'd find below the sea. They each have their own armor stats and weight levels. As the heavier the shell, the slower your dodges are, or rather the recovery of those dodges, because you could spend a long time trying to get up from a dodge, only to instantly be met with death because you took too darn long to get up. This is all stuff to consider when you find a shell, and the HUD conveniently displays the stats right next to your current shell so you can make the right decision. I think this is a clever mechanic that makes use of the game's underwater setting and protagonist being a hermit crab, because they change shells all the time, so it only makes sense that a fork-wielding hermit crab like Krill would use one to defend himself. They're also utilized in other clever ways, such as using a round one to roll like a ball for greater speed. It really makes you feel like Metroid Prime Pinball. There's even a section where you use a metal shell to latch onto a magnet so you could progress further in the level. I do wish there were more moments like these where the shells are actually incorporated into the level design, but at least they're cleverly utilized in the rest of the game. And they're made even better through the skill tree, which isn't too big and actually has some meaningful skills, like parrying enemy attacks and attacking their weak point for massive damage. Of course they were going to make this reference, how could they not? The parrying is especially unique because it's not like other games where you press block right before an enemy attack, leaving them open to a counter. No, instead, you have to hold down the block button and then release it right before the attack. It actually makes it a bit more challenging, which I appreciate, because the game itself, when compared to other Souls-likes at least, is not that hard. Now, if you're new to Souls-likes, this game will be absolutely brutal for you, but if you're someone who's played them before, you may find that this is quite a bit easier. I personally am more of a casual Souls fan, the only one I've really beaten is Elden Ring, but I still found myself breezing through most of these bosses and enemies with very few hitches. I wasn't disappointed nor really surprised by this because I kind of expected Another Crab's Treasure to be a Souls-like for beginners. I mean, look at its art style. It kind of looks like a SpongeBob episode a little bit. I could tell that this game is kind of a sample platter of what new players are in for with this genre. There's even an assist mode, which brings all kinds of difficulty-based settings into the game, like extra shell durability, reduced damage taken, lower enemy health, and what is that? Ho ho ho, now we're packing heat! Time to krill all the competition. I'm bringing all you fools down with me. No one can stop the almighty Krill. Yeah, Another Crab's Treasure definitely has a sense of humor. There is some funny dialogue thrown in there, as well as some hilarious product placement, like these sulfur-flavored cheesy guns. I swear to God, if this isn't butter, I'm seriously going to lose it. And of course, But back to the game, as with most Souls-likes, you are able to upgrade yourself not just through the skill tree, but the game's main collectible being microplastics, which is this game's version of the souls from Dark Souls, the blood echoes from Bloodborne, whatever you want to compare these to. You'll visit these rest stops called moon snail shells to upgrade the following stats: vitality, resistance, attack, and magic, or as this game calls it, umami. As you fight bosses, you unlock some special umami attacks like a giant lobster claw, as well as an explosive urchin. It also transfers to the shells, so if you have something like a soda can equipped, it'll emit bubbles that'll attack nearby enemies, a shot glass can transform into a spiky shield, and a sauce nozzle will let you breakdance. But overall, I didn't really use the umami as much as I could have, as I didn't really find them that useful, which is most likely my fault, as I didn't upgrade my magic power as much as I did my attack power. I found that the more I upgraded my attack, the easier the game got, because even if my vitality or shell resistance wasn't that high, I got pretty good at dodging, so I really just made my character an attack-based build. And that really came in handy when I unlocked the skill tree power that would let me attach shells to my weapon so I could use it as a hammer. The heavier the shell, the more slow but powerful my attacks were. And that's the thing about Souls-likes in general, it's really up to you how you decide to upgrade your character. It really helps that there's a level cap of 30, so I didn't upgrade my attacks too much, which let me upgrade my neglected attributes. I will say that even though upgrading my attacks made the game quite a bit easier for me, that did not translate to the final few bosses of the game, as the difficulty absolutely spikes when you get to that section, which I won't show you here. But if you're like me and you played this game thinking it might be a little too easy, just wait until those final few hours, man. So I've been talking a lot about the combat in Another Crab's Treasure, which makes sense, it's the main focus of the game, but how is everything else? As for the art style, it's cute, it's fun, the NPCs don't really have much emotion to their looks, but overall they still looked fine, and the areas you visit are pretty diverse as well. There's a kelp jungle, there's a disgusting rustic factory polluting the ocean, and there's a field connecting all these areas together being guarded by a giant enemy crab. Oh, did I make that joke already? Well, the game did, not me. So if you don't want to hear any more giant enemy crab jokes, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I promise you won't hear another giant enemy crab joke out of me. What's funny is I actually beat this crab sooner than the game intended, and one of the NPCs got mad at me because that wasn't what I was supposed to do. That's kind of funny. I love it when games take into account sequence breaking. It's very charming. Another element that separates Another Crab's Treasure from other Souls-likes is its emphasis on platforming. Traveling through these areas requires the use of jumping and swim gliding because there's really not much gravity in the ocean, so Krill is able to flutter a bit like Yoshi. Early on, he gets a fishing hook that acts as a grappling hook so he can swing across areas for shortcuts, and he can climb on select walls with netting on them. The platforming in this game is fine. It's not really there to stand out, as the star is once again the combat. In truth, it's really just there as more fancy traversal and nothing more. Speaking of traversal, that's one area where Another Crab's Treasure suffers, not in the movement itself, but how the game directs you where you need to go. There's only one NPC that guides you named Conch. He's an adventurer's kind of crab. He explains to you what direction you need to be heading, but this game doesn't include the directions in a map or even a journal. If you forget where you need to go, you have to find and talk to him again, and it's just kind of annoying. Not a major inconvenience, but this did lead to some confusion for me. As I was progressing through one level, I got to this closed door, which I thought was part of a puzzle. At least it looked like a puzzle, but it turns out I wasn't even supposed to be here. Instead, I had to go in a completely different direction to collect a MacGuffin that would let me open that door. I'm not saying a video game has to tell me every single thing I have to do, but I do wish in this instance there was something at that door telling me I shouldn't be here until I've collected X, Y, and Z. It also doesn't help that the map screen is completely immobile. Yeah, it shows you your current location, but you can't move it at all. Even Elden Ring let me move the map around. And I understand that Souls-likes are inherently cryptic, but it seems like Another Crab's Treasure hasn't found that balance between telling the player too much and telling them too little in some aspects like this. The game also needs some overall polish in a few areas, like the camera movement with enemies like these pufferfish that just jerk around like crazy when locked on. At the same time, it doesn't feel like a Souls-like game unless you have camera troubles, but this particular moment here is just flat out annoying. but not nearly as annoying as the enemies that attack you through walls, which happened to me a few times. Thankfully, I was able to get revenge later on with these enemies right here, but even still, I'd rather this not be an issue at all. And there was one extremely annoying moment where I was in the middle of a boss battle and I fell completely through the arena. I'm glad this only happened once in the entire game, but still, once is too many, and I hope this gets patched soon. Thankfully, none of these issues are so detrimental that it brings Another Crab's Treasure completely down for me, as it's saved by its great combat design that is both friendly for newcomers and familiar to those seasoned veterans. It's similar to other Souls-likes in a lot of ways, but it differentiates itself with the shells and their magic powers. However, there are some ideas in this game that I feel like could have been expanded upon further, such as the fishing grappling hook and the entirety of the platforming. I felt like they could have made these a whole lot more interesting if they had creative puzzles around them, or just more interesting level design. In the end, I liked Another Crab's Treasure, and I give it an 8 out of 10. Die-hard Souls-like fans should definitely check this game out, but I also recommend this to potential new fans who want to get into this genre without feeling overwhelmed. Anyway, thank you so much for watching our review of Another Crab's Treasure here on GameXplain. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more reviews like this, and until next time, bye-bye.